Welcome to DevOps Fundamentals. I'm really excited to have you on board to learn more about DevOps. This course has been broken down into 6 modules. The first module is this module where we'll be talking about effectively the course overview. Module 2 is going to dive into DevOps basics, understanding best practices, understanding what a pipeline is. Module 3, we're going to focus on development, such as how to understand CI and CD strategy, or how to handle source code management. Module 4, we're going to go ahead and understand more about release and deployments, getting to know how we're going to deploy the pipelines, what type of infrastructure we could use to deploy our pipelines on-prem and in the cloud. We'll also talk about KPIs in Module 5. This is really important because for us as a DevOps professional, we really need to know, for example, how we're doing. And the way to understand how we're doing is to measure. So we'll be focusing on some of the metrics that we'll need to understand, such as lead time, for example, or software revisions that we'll be performing and how to measure those. Module 6 is going to be the closeout of the course. We'll do a short review, and I'll provide you some more resources. Now, let's go ahead and introduce your instructor before we get started. My name is Joe Holbrook, and I've been in IT for 25 years. I'm the CLO of Tech Commanders as well. I've also been in IT in various roles, such as pre-sales and post-sales roles, development roles, and also been working for a number of different companies in various segments of industries. I have many different certifications, for example, and also I'm a highly published author as well. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the reinforcements we'll be using to help enable you to grasp the concepts we'll be talking about. Now, the learning reinforcements will be focused on Jenkins and Git. I'll be going through demos, AWS and GCP cloud features. I'll be going through whiteboard discussions, website reviews, practice questions, and flashcards will be provided as well. We have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and continue on to the next lesson. Module 2. In this module, we want to go ahead and start understanding what DevOps is all about, to really understand building blocks, what are the best practices, why use containers and why they're so important in the world of development and DevOps. We'll talk about the different types of pipelines that we have, such as CI and CD pipelines. And then I'll also walk through a whiteboard of how pipelines work and provide some insight on different scenarios. We have a lot to cover in this module. Let's go ahead and proceed to the first lesson. Now, DevOps is, of course, a very common term that's used in IT, and we want to know what exactly this means. So DevOps is really more or less a collaborative effort between basically operations and development. That's where the term came from, dev and ops. Now, DevOps, basically from a principal perspective, is really meant to provide better software. That's really where it's going. And basically, we want to use DevOps as a way to engage more of an agile relationship between development and IT operations. Now, this came about for several reasons. Traditionally, in IT, development, operations, support, for example, there were 2 different business units in a lot of organizations. And because of that, a lot of communication just didn't happen because you had different business units. And because of that, development would do their own thing and operations would do their own thing. And this caused some problems. Development would roll out new updates, wouldn't tell operations. So with DevOps, this is solved through collaboration. So the goal of DevOps is to change and improve the relationship by advocating better relationships. The reality is that DevOps is not so much a technical exercise, it's really a people exercise. Now, when it comes to communication and collaboration, It really is meant to remove silos. That's really the goal of DevOps. At its core, the philosophy and practice is really going to focus on agility, collaboration, and automation within IT and development team processes. Well, what this means is that we're going to work together and we're going to remove the silos and we're going to use automation and improved processes to basically bring a better enterprise rollout. Now, that's an application rollout. Now, when it comes to DevOps, another thing that we want to consider is to understand the goal. So the goal is really to bridge the gap between development and operations. Again, we need to remove those silos. When we do that, we want to remove the blame game. And this is something I remember quite vividly in a lot of situations where you didn't really get communication from the development team or the operations team. And basically, you're like, well, who's to blame? Well, again, who knows? The reality is that no one's communicating. So we want to basically create collaboration in our environments to really improve upon any kind of issues that we run into typically with the silo. And if we do that, we're going to have some great benefits. So the main thing to think about DevOps is that it's not really a methodology. It's not really a technical exercise in a lot of respects. There is technical to it, of course, but it's really a culture shift. It's really trying to work together as a team, even if you may be on the other side of the world or on the other side of the building in a different business unit. You're really supporting the same mission is really what it comes down to. So DevOps really brings together principles and workflows and best practices to the enterprise. When we think of, for example, pipelines and processes, we know that, of course, there's continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. We may have heard of these terms. And I'll touch on these terms briefly, and then we're going to go deeper into each of these further on in this module. But basically, CI, known as continuous integration, is where we're going to merge our working copies into a pipeline. Now, a pipeline is what? It's nothing more than basically strict processes in place. And the benefits we could realize could be everything from risk reduction to manual processes, improved efficiency. Now, continuous delivery is an extension of CI, but it's really, again, taking things basically from being, when it's built and actually bringing it into effectively a release stage. And then we have basically continuous deployments. This is really an extension of CI as well, but it's really meant to automate everything. It's meant to remove manual issues. So when we extend automation to testing, to deployment, this can bring some benefits. So basically, it provides for iterative processes and ensures quality of products. And lastly, we want to think about continuous deployments from a benefit perspective as lowering risk, reducing lead time, and also providing quicker feedback. So if we're able to get to market quicker, for example, that's a benefit to the whole company, not just to development. So this is a big deal if we actually, plan and schedule and really do what we need to do. Now, to sum up, for example, these pipelines, basically you could see how we have continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment. We're just basically going through each stage and adding to it when we get to deployment. And we want to really get to a point where we're at continuous deployment to where everything basically goes from basically the repository to the build process to integration to release and deploy without having any manual tasks. That's really, I think, the main goal. Now, when it comes to comparing these terms, and again, I wanted to put a different meaning to this because I have found that no matter how you explain CI and CD, sometimes the definitions may not make sense to one audience to another. So I want to provide you another set of definitions that are widely used for CI and CD. This is from Stack Overflow. So think of continuous integration as taking the working copies and having them synchronized to a mainline several times a day. When I say mainline, that just means what? Pipeline. Basically a set of processes we're going to follow, has different stages. Continuous delivery. This is basically, again, similar to CI, except we're actually putting it into production. So CI is basically, we're going to the main line, we're sharing it, but that doesn't mean it's going to production. Then we have continuous deployment. This is where, again, we're taking the next step after continuous delivery, but we're deploying the product whenever it goes through QA. Now, again, the word here is automatically. In other words, we're not going to have a person at a CCB board saying, okay, we go ahead and execute this now. That's not going to happen. This is all automatic. And then lastly, again, to sum up, DevOps is what? It's an enterprise software development phrase used to mean an agile relationship between development and operations. It's really about what? Collaboration. Let's now proceed to the next lesson.